How do you feel about our current anti-bullying programs, and what would you do to strengthen these programs across the district? What mechanism would you recommend to prevent bullying of kids with social deficits? Two questions with similar focus. Camille?
Each of our schools has anti-bullying programs. Each of the elementary schools and the middle schools, actually, as you come into the middle school, there's anti-bullying programs. And they are, this is Heidi's bailiwick, I know, but they've been very successful. And part of their success, and there's some debate about whether we should have one program that every school adopts, or whether and some people in this audience have a feeling about that. And then there are others who say some of the success of the anti-bullying programs is that certain teachers and certain principals buy into a certain program, and that's its strength. And I see other people nodding in the audience about that. So here we are on the board trying to assess this and finding that magic medium. For me, as long as there are anti-bullying programs that kids feel connected to their schools and that we're assessing this is important to me. We have moved further into the middle schools that we have entry programs as well for the middle school, so kids are feeling more connected, and there's transition programs from 5th into 6th grade. These are really good programs and give middle school kids some common language at their school to talk about things. I don't have a strong preference on one or the other because I see the virtues of all. However, the fact that we are involved with them, we are committed to them, is most important.
So I have two comments. One is about this question of site-based control and anti-bullying programs, and I do think that it's fair to ask, and it's a requirement that members of the board ask, if we have a proliferation of different programs in an area, does that represent a wise use of our resources? Are we better off for having done that? And in the case of anti-bullying programs and social-emotional programs generally, we have a very wide range of sort of deployed programs across the district. And my sense is that leaves us in a state of having expended more resources with probably less good results than had we focused on best practices in these areas. The second thing that I would say about anti-bullying is that we really need to be careful as we deal with bullying in our schools not to demonize the bully. And this may be my sociological background, but I'm afraid sometimes that we're seeing scapegoating and blaming of kids who are obviously working through issues of their own in the context of bullying. And I think it's important as we think about that we need to practice kindness and support across all of the kids in our district, whether they are, in this particular instance, doing behaviors that we don't like or not.
I think this is one of those situations where by getting folks engaged, by getting the sites engaged in the activities that they think would be best for anti-bullying, we've gotten every site committed to an anti-bullying program. And that actually is not a minor feat. Now that we've gotten them engaged, now that we've gotten people committed, and there's been a commitment at the middle school as well, and I have an 8th grader. I'll tell you, there's a lot more than just that entry program. There's a lot going on at the middle schools. We need to take that buy-in and see if some programs are working better than others. I'm also on the board of Youth Community Service, and I know we spend a lot of time with our middle school and high schoolers on being an upstander, which isn't a specific anti-bullying program, but it's around values and being a good person and reducing bullying on sites. If we could take that buy-in that we have, and if we can look at our programs and actually be honest about what's working and what's not, I think that we can come to some conclusions using the common language we have around developmental assets and using that structure to pick some best practices and make sure those best practices are across the district. Now, whether that's one bullying program or best practices that are practiced in a couple, efficiency is not the only thing that we need to do in this district. We also have to be effective, and we want to make sure that these programs are actually practiced as well as rolled out. Thank you. Heidi.
So Yes, this is my question. So a few years ago, I worked with the PTA Council to try to figure out what bullying prevention programs are in our schools. Let me start with, we have bullying in our schools. We're not in a bubble here where bullying does not happen. Bullying happens in our schools, and we need to acknowledge that so that we can approach it. Bullying has three components to it: intent to harm, repeated negative behaviors, and an imbalance of social power. So we need to make sure that we're using best practices when we approach bullying and bullying prevention programs across our schools. It took, when I worked with the PTA Council, it took 6 months to figure out just what programs existed at the different schools. And they're not all bullying prevention programs. Some are called character development programs. They're not all bullying prevention programs. So you may find at one school they're using a model of talking it out, which puts the bully and the target together, and other schools in which you're using more evidence-based programs now, where we're teaching kids to be upstanders, not bystanders, where we're creating communities that care, where students are standing up to bullying together, where they're taking the student away from the bully, and where the bully can have the bullying behaviors can be addressed in a different way. This is what we're talking about. We have 5 of our elementary schools that have one program, and I think we need to look at that and see if we can implement it in all our elementary schools.
Thank you.